So just to kind of get started, given that each of your teams had relative success in 2021, does that change how preseason is handled versus when you were a brand new coach or when you were building a team? And Gio, since you went through the cup, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, in some things it changes because Seattle and Colorado, they are in the Conca Champions, so they had to start earlier. So they are a little bit ahead in schedule. They have to prepare earlier. So of course, for them it's a little bit different. But for all of us, I mean, even if we did well last year, we all want to be competitive. We want to come back very strong. So we're always trying to find all the pieces, how we can get better. In preseason is a very important part of, to make sure that we put everything on the players for what they're going to give us during the year.
And Brian?
Well, what I would say is, to start off with, thank you all of Tucson, all the fans that are here. I see some Portland fans. I mean, that's okay. I like that. That's okay. What I would say is that I am truly thankful for a lot of different reasons. I am with a person who, kicked me out of the playoffs. I am with a person that won our division, and I'm against my arch rival who made it to a MLS Cup this year. So I'm very thankful for sharing the stage with these three gentlemen. As the senior member of the coaching staff here, I'm going to just sit back and let all the young guys, the experts, answer all the questions. So if that's okay with you, ask Pablo the next question.
So before we get to Pablo, so Robin, since you now had actually a couple seasons to build and obviously progressed up the ladder in the Western Conference and now the reigning regular season champions, has preseason changed for you?
Yeah, before I get to that, I have to thank Brian because it's been a long time since anyone's called me young anything.
Well, you're younger than I am.
Are we sure?
Yes.
I'm not so sure. All right. Well, I appreciate it anyway. Yeah, for us, it's this year feels like our starting point is ahead of where it's been. I mean, we have a new team, and you're trying to implement new ideas, new principles. You're really starting from scratch, and it's a lot of repetition of very basic things. And I feel like this is the first year that I felt like we kind of jumped in where we left off last year. The thing that you'll find is, the thing that all of us as players know is, even though we were only off for, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you lose that little bit of intensity that makes a difference between mid-season form and early on form. So there's definitely still certain things that are always the same in trying to get players back into that feeling of how intense you have to be and how close you have to close people down, and just things that, the expression I've used is, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable again. And so for that, it's the same, but in terms of where our players are, we feel like we're ahead of where we've been, and it's actually nice to start in a position where we're really concentrating on details more than actual principles and basics from the very beginning. You didn't like that question.
And Pablo, now is
Like your answer.
youngest coach.
Okay.
As the youngest coach, now that you've had the interim tag taken off, how does that? How do you approach this preseason now that you have at least a half season with your guys under your belt?
Yeah, again, just want to express the gratitude to be on the stage with these coaches, coaches that are mentors to me, whether they know it or not. Spent a lot of time watching the way they prepare their teams in lieu of how we're going to go about it. So again, it's a real privilege to be here. As a coach in preseason, I think for us, having had a crazy run to end the last season, was really about coming back into preseason and trying to pick up where we left off. We have a new ownership group in Salt Lake that are really driving a lot of momentum, and so important that we get back and we really, to Robin's point, is find that energy and that drive from day one. And I couldn't be happier with the first week, and obviously it's the first week, so everyone's giddy to get back. But it's really about sustaining that and building towards a good foundation that we set last year.
And then just kind of for the group as we transition, how important is it, and I know you guys have a game tomorrow night, how important is it to get game action? Whether it's a 45 or a full 90, like to Robin, to the point of getting that little extra step, do you need those games to get in and not just be on the training field?
Is that for me?
For any of you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical, and it's one of the reasons why we all come. The facilities here are fantastic. The fields are great. Everything in Tucson is fantastic. But one of the reasons that we do like to come is when you set out your preseason plans, the first thing is who's going to be there, who can we get games with, because as we make our way through preseason, we have benchmarks that we're trying to achieve, and you can't really get a good handle on how you're doing without playing some competition. For us, we're very fortunate. These three teams are excellent teams, and really, really important that we play teams like this because it's the test. And you see what works, you see what doesn't work. This time of year, we try things, and a lot of things get thrown out the window based on some of these games. But without the games and without the quality of games that we have, it wouldn't be the same. We could play lower league teams, college teams, and you really don't learn about yourselves. But it's when you play against teams that are very well coached with very good players, that's when you can really find out where you are.
So Gio, do you want to share what you're going to try again tomorrow?
Definitely. No, the good thing is always this game. I think we always have played
I told Gio my lineup already. He already
You
knows.
changed lineup already.
He knows already.
No, so the great thing is, there's great rivalry, but there's great respect. And last year we needed a game. It was crucial for us, and we needed to play against a competitive team. So we went up to Seattle. Kind enough, Brian was good for us to be able to play a good competitive match. And now they are on the same scenario for us to be able to be very competitive for them. So my thing in my mind right now is to be as competitive as I can. That way they have a good game, but also get the fitness that we need for our players in order to make sure that we progress. Because as Robin said, these games are very important for us because they set the tone of what we're going to find now during the season. And it's very important to make this game very meaningful because if you don't play good games during this time, you have a false sense of that you are in a place that you're really not. So playing these matches is very, very important.
So I'd like to add on to Gio a little bit here. So when he was in Champions League, we made a game for him on his time schedule, which is collaboration. And although we are arch enemies, we still have the respect for each other, the franchises, that we make favors for each other. And he was very respectful for us. This year, we're going to have a competitive game. I think that's critical because our jobs, we have good jobs. Look, we have decent jobs. There is pressure for us. But it's a good job. I enjoy my job. I know these guys enjoy playing the game that we grew up. Robin mentioned we were all players at some point. We all appreciate the jobs, and it's a good feeling for us to be cooperative within MLS in some of these bigger tournaments. So anytime I could help any of you when it comes to Champions League, because that is one of the competitions that MLS wants to do well in. So when we play against some of the Mexican teams, Leagues Cup this year, we had a good run into the final. I know we lost there in the final to Santos, but that was entertaining. That was exciting for us as a franchise. We had good results, and I'm always watching. I always hope for the best. We've had a couple of teams that have been right there in the finals. Montreal, Toronto, I know we've been close, but no team really has, from MLS, has won a CONCACAF Champions League. So that's one of the things that I know our franchise strives for, and we appreciate the help.
Likewise.
So I feel like Brian's got a sneak peek at all my questions. So we'll start with Pablo. You all are former players. So what have you learned or what did you experience as players getting ready for preseason that has kind of lent yourself to how you coach and how you get your teams prepared?
I think for me, it's the balance because I think you have to put in the work. But one of the things that it's a little thing, but guys having dinner away and getting on their own and really building relationships that I think carry on to the field. And so I think just finding that right balance where you get them to push further than they think they can, and with that, you give them a bit of normalcy, and it's not always team, and it's not always this. It's them building relationships away from the game. and that was really important for me as a player, and that's something that I tried to give these guys.
Robin?
Repeat the question, please. I was just thinking about a story I wanted to tell about Pablo, but I'll tell that later.
Let's hear the Pablo story. I mean, let's get that one out there right away. Come on.
I was
What's
actually
Pablo's story?
thinking, so it's a long story. Pablo's from Phoenix, so he's from here. I first met him when he was playing in an under-17 national championship years and years ago when I was coaching in an under-19 girls team from Colorado. And myself and our fellow coaches just started cheering for this kid from Arizona from this team because he was so damn good. And the three of us were like literally following this team around, watching them play. We're trying to win a national championship ourselves with this under-19 girls team. And we couldn't stop following this kid around. We're going, Pablo, Pablo. No idea who he was at the time. Shows up in the league a couple years later, several years later. A couple years after that, we fall into a national team camp together. And it was my first chance to really get to know him, and I've always admired him. And the next year, he got traded to Colorado. And the thing about Pablo is he's a super intense player and coach. And that's actually one of the things that he does really well for his team. He gets them to play with his level of intensity. But by the time he came to Colorado, I think I was 34, 35, and established in the league. And nobody's tackling me in practice. They just know who I am, and that's the way it is. And I remember Pablo's first day of practice. Ball comes, he comes sliding in 2 foot. I like jump out of the way and go, what the? I go, oh, that's right. This is Pablo. This is how he trains. This is how he treats every single minute. And when you talk about what did we do? How does that translate into what we did for preseason? The one thing you find out is everyone isn't you. That's my biggest coaching lesson that I learned in my first stint as a head coach, is that everyone isn't you, so they're not motivated the same way. But I do know the types of players that I like and that I want to get, and Pablo is the epitome of that type of player. Because this is a guy that if it was 5v2, if it was soccer, tennis, he would absolutely break your neck to win. And he was 100% engaged. And that's one of the things that I take from my playing into coaching is you have to be able to train the way that you play, and it starts day one. And you have to have that level of intensity, and I just think it's the only way to play the game. You have players who can float in and out, they're super talented, but if you're floating in and out, you're not my kind of player. I want I want a group who is really committed and works really hard, and from day one, they actually do their work in the off season, and when it comes to day one, they're ready to go with that sort of intensity. And when I look back at my career, no one epitomizes that more than Pablo. So whenever I see him, I think about that, and I think about what the standards should look like.
I'm gonna pile on here just for a quick second. So, one of the beauties of Tucson is the fields are all kind of together, and we all go out, and we all, as coaches, we all talk to each other as we walk out. But then we're always watching what the other coach is doing. It's normal, right? And so I was watching Pablo's session today, and he did a little 3v2 transition drill that he had going right in front of our fence. And so me and Preki are standing there, and we're watching, and we're going, God, that's what we do, and how we do this, and Pablo's doing this. And it was intense. I mean, it was there, and you could tell that the players were having enjoyment in what they were doing. And I agree, Robin. I think what you do very well, Pablo, is he gets the best out of his players, because the training environment is a good training environment. And so my job, what I feel personally is my job as a coach, as a manager, is to get the best out of people. And whether you're in a corporate job or a soccer job or any sort of management job, you just want to make sure that the people that work with you maximize their talents. And I think you did a good job today, because we were watching and it was very good. I enjoyed that. He was great.
Gio, do you have any Pablo stories?
So many. No, but we were talking also today, it's incredible. And then it goes back to what you asked before as well. We're talking with Roman, how many preseason we have had already, participating as a player, as a coach, and you start remember all the things, and it's been so many. And
I think it's 33 for me.
33.
I think so. As a player or coach, I think it's the 33rd preseason for me.
Yeah, so it's incredible, as a...
Incredible, I can still move. He's really old. That's really incredible.
So it's incredible. So to be able to motivate the players as a coach, as a coach, as a coaching staff, on a constant basis, every beginning of each season is not an easy thing, and you have to have the right personality. And as you were saying, Pablo, it just has that intensity to push everyone to the limit, and that's very important. But also you have to know what is the limit as well, because you don't want to go over. So that balance is very, very important. So how can you keep the guys very in tune and ready to go, but still, be composed and understand how to see the game in a smart way.
Gio, as you mentioned that, my pre-training speech to you after we were done with our conversation was, look, we have a game tomorrow, and we are, of course, arch rivals. And my message to my team was, we need to play hard. We need to play fair. We need to play hard, and let's see what the game gives, because that's normal, because it's an MLS competition. We don't want the game to turn into a wrestling match or fouls or whatever, but history has shown that sometimes our team, that's the way it is. And so the enthusiasm or the tenor of training, what I liked about Pablo's session was, it was good. The players were enjoying themselves. It was fun. Tomorrow night, it will be a little more serious for our teams. I think the players just do that on their own. It's not me saying, oh, it's Portland, it's a pregame, it's not that.
And I find that to be, it is a very important point, because sometimes we don't even have to talk too much in this type of matches. I have found that sometimes when the players know that we play in Seattle, it's like already they built up themselves that desire to want to be competitive. And in this time we have a little bit of a team that is in transition. We have a lot of academy players. So it's interesting how now they are feeling so excited to be, on the shoes of some of the players that they have seen in the past. So of course we don't have Diego Valeri and this type of players, but now these academy players, they want to be the Diego Valeri. They want to be now, and I give them a little bit of fire to say, guys, we're playing against the best players that they have. So they're all pumped, and so
good.
that way they come and they give a good competitive match, because that's always been the game against Seattle. So, and we have played every preseason, and every preseason is to the limit. But one thing always, at the end of each game, every player from Seattle, they come, they give my hand, my players, they go to Brian, and so even if there's a little bit of tense situation, there's always respect. And I think that's something that is very, very important.
Agreed.
To switch gears for a second, this plays a little bit into some of the U.S. games coming up, but as MLS has experienced growth both in the number of teams, the overall audience reach, and how players are getting sold overseas, where do you guys see the next evolution of the MLS coming, and how the league is going to evolve next?
The league is a steadily evolving organism. From the time when the league started and we were in the very first year to now, the league is better. The coaching is better, the preparation of young kids is better, the academy system is better. So we find that it's something we've been saying for a long time. The average American player today is better than the average American player 25 years ago, for sure. And that's a byproduct of the coaching, of the youth coaching, the preparation, the academy system. All of that is making things better. When the league started, we also spent a lot of money on aging superstars, because we felt like that's what we needed to do to get people in the stands. And it's really great to see that we've transitioned away from that. And now when we spend money on foreign players, it's about exciting young players. And that was a big change within the league. And where it goes from here is you're starting to see now that transition's not over. That we're in that mode now where we're not really getting aging superstars anymore. I feel like, I don't think there's really been one since Thierry Henry, I guess, Zlatan. But we're moving towards, the game has changed so much from 1996 to now. And if you talk to the sports science guys, the game is all about running. We thought we ran a lot, not even close to what they do now in terms of sprint distances and that sort of thing. So the game is definitely getting younger on the global stage, it's getting younger here. And what's really interesting, you talk about what's the next evolution, is the fact of how many players are now getting sold abroad from this league, from the academy systems. It's an absolutely fantastic thing, because around the world, that's how clubs make their money. big TD contracts, whatever. But at the end of the day, player movement is how clubs make their money. So now we find ourselves in an interesting time where we have good players come up. We want to win, so we're happy to have these young players come up, but we also want to sustain ourselves. And now we find clubs are selling players. And it's an interesting balance. Pablo used that word earlier. It's an interesting balance because a team like FC Dallas, who I think we're calculating has made 30-something million in the last 24 months, but haven't made the playoffs in 2 years. So now it becomes a question of what do you want your model to be and what are you trying to achieve, and can you do both? And I think that's what we're all striving for, is to have players that can sustain our teams and move them along when we have other young players that can come in. And so we want to have success, but we also want to be able to sell players. And I think we're all in the same business, regardless of if our clubs have more or less money. At the end of the day, I think we're all interested in doing that.
And Pablo, with the next academy kid coming up, you want to field that on how that's kind of evolved from when you played to now having to coach a 14-year-old?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting league for sure. And I'm just getting a little bit of it now with, I think we have five players in that are 17 and younger. And it's just really interesting because you're part coach, but you're really part older brother. And, you know, Axel Kai is with the group and super talented, and I think he's going to be a real player on the global scene. He's just got this, he's got the it factor. He's mature. He's got a real eye for goal. And some of the things that I'm talking to him about have nothing to do with soccer, but how to be a young pro and how to utilize the older players in the locker room to his benefit. So little things like that. But we have a great young group of players with us here. There's a bunch more in the academy in Salt Lake, and so we really want to really promote, you know, the younger generation at the speed in which they're ready to develop, which I think is really important, because a lot of times we just want to, you know, to Robin's point, is how much do we want to develop at the expense of getting the results that we need, and so that balance is a really, you know, tricky one. But it's been great to be involved and to have these guys in the preseason here in Tucson and to grow from that and get an experience of what it's like to be a professional.
And then I guess just to wrap up, Brian and Gio, if you guys want to kind of give your thoughts. I mean, you guys have gone through, went to college and then went, you know, drafted in the MLS in '96 and played in some of the early years in some of the older leagues. How has that progressed as you've seen it as coaches now?
Well, I'd like to comment on what Pablo said a little bit and what Robin said, just touching point on just humanity, you know, just relationships. Outside of your parents and your school teachers, coaches have a big influence on young people's careers. And you have a 14, 15-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids. I mean, I have older children. I know where you guys are at your lives with older kids, but my kids are all in their 30s. But, you know, it's an important role. It's something that I don't take lightly. I think it's changed. There's a little bit of change from the good old days when we used to do stupid things in the locker room and everything. But now we have 16, 17-year-old kids where we have to actually pay attention. And it just has to be, these are young men and they're the future of your club, and you have to bring them up the right way. And Pablo was telling me the story today about how he manages some of the young kids, and I say, yeah, that's just what we have to do. So there's common threads between the four of us. And then on a personal note to Robin's thing is, I remember the 1994 World Cup. And I was there, and my late great friend Fernando Clavillo was on that national team, and we paid attention. I was there in Colombia when, you know, we beat Colombia and all of those experiences. And then 2026 is around the corner, believe it or not. And that is just going to push our league. I believe it's going to push our league even higher. We're making, at the Sounders, we're making a big push to try and be a host city just in the Northwest. I'm sure a lot of Portland fans would drive up, Vancouver fans, all of that. It's going to be such a grand event, such a big, you know, global event that gets me excited and wants to keep me in the game for another few years. I mean, I'm ready to retire. I mean, Robin thinks he's old. I'm going to retire, but I might make it to 2026 and then I'll retire. But those are life-changing events that we deal with on a daily basis, just educating young men, making them into better young men. And then I'm super excited about the World Cup in 2026. I think it's going to be great for our league.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the game keeps on growing in every aspect, and we're talking about young players. We're talking about teams, the quality, but also the knowledge of the fans. The knowledge of the fans that they come to watch the game as well. The performance staff. Now, I mean, you spoke. Yes, we thought that we ran a lot, but we didn't even know because we had nothing to record anything that we did. Now everything is stats. Everything is so. To perfection. I mean, if I get too many sprints of one player, I know that they're going to be concerned because they have exactly how many, miles they ran. So that is also very, very important. And talking about, coaching is not only, as you said, Brian, it's not only about the tactics. It's more important in building a locker room, in building a culture, and thank God our 4 teams, we can say that. But it's relaying also to the different generations, because I talk to Mabiala in a different way than I talk to the younger players. And he understands some things, and when I mention, and the incredible part is sometimes I talk about Platini or Maradona, and some players go, who? So I know that I'm like a little bit in another time, and then you have to understand how they perceive information, how you have to talk to one different than the other. So that what makes our job even more fun, more interesting. The connecting with the players, the being in that environment is something that is one of the best parts of the job that we do. And I agree with you. I'm excited about 2026. Looking how things are evolving, I think it's going to be a tremendous World Cup, and we'll see MLS even be a higher league. I was in Italy during the vacation time. And the amount of people that are scouting players, the amount of people that are watching our games is incredible. And the eyes are all over United States. And each young player that is going to Europe, they don't go just to be on the bench. And we see guys going to play, starting in important teams. So the future is amazing. We're very excited.
Gentlemen, thank you all for this evening.